In my previous job at the National Theatre Studio, I had encountered some of this work already, some of the work that was being done around women in theatre and inequality and gender inequality in all sorts of areas, particularly in my role at the studio, working with directors. But there was quite a charge being led at that time around investigating other areas. There was some work at that time being done at the studio around older actresses and and whether or not there was sufficient, well, the fact that there weren't sufficient roles for older actresses to play or women to play at a certain point in their careers, uh, and there were sessions being run around with writers exploring and actresses exploring that, and Lucy Kerbel from Tonic and Marion Elliott, who's the associate director at the National, were exploring that area, and there were a lot of ideas going around that really interested me, particularly in terms of the confidence that women may or may not, young women may or may not have be given at a very early stage, even at sort of youth theatre stage. As some of the research that Lucy was doing was really illuminating, and so I think I was just very interested in it from my previous job already. And when I joined West Yorkshire Playhouse and Tonic started to invite theatres to join Advance, the initiative as a research initiative, it just seemed like a necessary step for us to take part in it. And I suppose it's exciting. It presented a sort of a new way of engaging with it, because in my role at West Yorkshire Playhouse, I'm integrally involved with planning and commissioning and producing new work. So our particular my particular interest was always it stemmed from my thinking earlier, which was a slow dawning realization of a really obvious conclusion, which was that story seemed to be seems to sit at the heart of a lot of these issues. The kinds of stories we tell and the kinds of people who are driving those stories. To me, the sort of big sort of light bulb moment was realizing that it's stupid to sort of realize, to think that it hadn't occurred to me before as clearly that the workforce, the creative workforce in theatre, is going to be hugely influenced by the kinds of stories that you're telling. So if those stories happen to be about have men at the centre of them, it's more likely that certainly likely that more men will be on stage, and it's also possibly likely on an unconscious level that men will be interpreting those stories as parts of the creative team, and it's also likely to shape the audience that's watching it. So flipping that on its head and imagining women at the centre of those stories just seemed like okay, story is a very powerful political act. The choice of story, I mean, it's certainly political when it's representing people whose stories are not always heard, and it's particularly political when you can put those stories on bigger stages. Just the continued raising of consciousness was brilliant, and I think because they're quite wide ranging, even though we were primarily talking about women in theatre and their and imbalances in all sorts of areas, we were also really talking, that those conversations covered every part of what we do. So it was really useful to have an opportunity to get out of the office and sit with peers and have a chance to view your own working, your own schedule of work through the lens of equality, really, and to hear other people's insights, and also just to, I mean, it's really useful to be in a room with theatres at a time where we're all looking to co-produce and hatch plans together. It's always hard to meet people, so, or it's always pressurising. To be in a room full of loads of different theatres at any one time was good, and actually led to some useful conversations around our particular area of focus and some potential co-producing partners. So that was great as well. I think the challenge that remains for us is that with a constantly changing set of colleagues, even within the organisation, at West Yorkshire Playhouse, is to sufficiently embed the things we've taken away from Advance and the values that we've started to kind of really focus on, and make sure that they find a way for them to keep present in the work that we do, with new staff joining or new members of my team joining, is so that it's sort of, in a way, always part of the handover, in a way, and also that it's sufficiently kind of stated in our in our programming policies that it's when I'm not there, hopefully someone else will think it's important enough to keep driving it.